All right, sixth grade, this is The Magician's Nephew for April 1st, and here we go. On their left, the mountains were much higher, but every now and then there was a gap where you could see, between steep pine woods, a glimpse of the southern lands that lay beyond them, looking blue and far away. That'll be where Archenland is, said Polly. Yes, but look ahead, said Diggory. For now a great barrier of cliffs rose before them, and they were almost dazzled by the sunlight dancing on the great waterfall by which the river roars and sparkles down into Narnia itself from the high western lands in which it rises. They were flying so high already that the thunder of those falls could only just be heard as small, thin sound, but they were not yet high enough to fly over the top of the cliffs. We'll have to do a bit of zigzagging here, said Fledge. Hold on tight. And he began flying to and fro, getting higher at each turn. The air grew colder, and they heard the call of eagles far below them. I say, look back, look behind, said Polly. There they could see the whole valley of Narnia stretched out to where, just before the eastern horizon, there was a gleam of the sea. And now they were so high that they could see tiny-looking jagged mountains appearing beyond the northern moors, and plains of what looked like sand far in the south. I wish we had someone to tell us what all those places are, said Diggory. I don't suppose they're anywhere yet, said Polly. I mean, there's no one there and nothing happening. The world only began today. No, but people will get there, said Diggory, and then they'll have to make histories, you know. Well, it's a jolly good thing they haven't now, said Polly, because nobody can be made to learn it, battles and dates and all that rot. Now they were over the top of the cliffs, and in a few minutes the valley land of Narnia had sunk out of sight behind them. They were flying over a wild country of steep hills and dark forest, still following the course of the river. The really big mountains loomed ahead, but the sun was now in the travelers' eyes, and they couldn't see things very clearly in that direction, for the sun sank lower and lower till the western sky was all like one great furnace full of melted gold. And it set at last behind a jagged peak which stood up against the brightness as sharp and flat as if it were cut out of cardboard. It's none too warm up here, said Polly, and my wings are beginning to ache, said Fledge, and there's no sign of a valley with a lake in it, like what Aslan said. What about coming down and looking for a decent place to spend the night in? We shan't reach that place tonight. Yes, and surely it's about time for supper, said Diggory. So Fledge came lower and lower. As they came down nearer and nearer to the earth among the hills, the air grew warmer, and after traveling so many hours with nothing to listen to but the beat of Fledge's wings, it was nice to hear the homely earthy noises again, the chatter of the river on its stony bed, and the creaking of trees in the light wind. A warm, good smell of sun-baked earth and grass and flowers came up to them. At last Fledge alighted. Diggory rolled off and helped Polly to dismount. Both were glad to stretch their stiff legs. The valley in which they had come down was in the heart of the mountains. Snowy heights, one of them looking rose-red in the reflection of sunlight, towered above them. I am hungry, said Diggory. Well, tuck in, said Fledge, taking a big mouthful of grass. And then he raised his head, still chewing with the bits of grass sticking out on each side of his mouth like whiskers, and said, Come on, you two, don't be shy. There's plenty for us all. But we can't eat grass, said Diggory. Said Fledge, speaking with his mouth full. Well, I don't know quite what you'll do then. Very good grass, too. Polly and Diggory stared at one another in dismay. Well, I do think someone might have arranged about our meals, said Diggory. I'm sure Aslan would have if you asked him, said Fledge. Wouldn't he know without being asked? Said Polly. I've no doubt he would, said the horse, still with his mouth full, but I've the sort of idea he likes to be asked. But what on earth are we supposed to do? Asked Diggory. I'm sure I don't know, said Fledge. Unless you try the grass, you might like it better than you think. Well, don't be silly, said Polly, stamping her foot. Of course humans can't eat grass any more than you could eat a mutton chop. For goodness sake, don't talk about chops and things, said Diggory. It only makes it worse. Diggory said that Polly had better take herself home by Ring and get something to eat there. He couldn't himself because he had promised to go straight on his message for Aslan, and if once he showed up again at home, anything might happen to prevent his getting back. But Polly said she wouldn't leave him, and Diggory said it was jolly decent of her. I say, said Polly, I've still got the remains of that bag of toffee in my pocket. It will be better than nothing. A lot better, said Diggory. But be careful to get your hand into your pocket without touching your ring. This was a difficult and delicate job, but they managed it in the end. The little paper bag was very squashy and sticky when they finally got it out, so that it was more a question of tearing the bag off the toffees than getting the toffees out of the bag. Some grown-ups, you know how fussy they can be about that sort of thing, would rather have gone without supper altogether than eat those toffees. There were 9 of them all told. It was Diggory who had the bright idea of eating 4 each and planting the 9th one. For, as he said, if the bar off the lamppost turned into a little light tree, why shouldn't this turn into a toffee tree? So they dibbled a small hole in the turf and buried the piece of toffee. Then they ate the other pieces, making them last as long as they could. It was a poor meal. Even with all the paper, they couldn't help eating as well. When Fledge had quite finished his own excellent supper, he lay down. The children came and sat one on each side of him, leaning against his warm body. And when he had spread a wing over each, they were really quite snug. As the bright young stars of that new world came out, they talked over everything. How Diggory had hoped to get something for his mother, and how instead of that he had been sent on this message. And they repeated to one another all the signs by which they would know the place they were looking for, the blue lake, and the hill with the garden on top of it. The talk was just beginning to slow down as they got sleepy, when suddenly Polly sat up, wide awake, and said, "Hush!" Everyone listened as hard as they could. "Perhaps it's only the wind in the trees," said Diggory presently. "I'm not so sure," said Fledge. "Anyway, wait! There it goes again. By Aslan, it is something." The horse scrambled to its feet with a great noise and a great upheaval. The children were already on theirs. Fledge trotted to and fro, sniffing and whinnying. The children tiptoed this way and that, looking behind every bush and tree. They kept on thinking they saw things. There was one time when Polly was perfectly certain she had seen a tall, dark figure gliding quickly away in a westerly direction. But they caught nothing, and in the end Fledge lay down again, and the children re-snuggled, if that's the right word, under his wings. They went to sleep at once. Fledge stayed awake much longer, moving his ears to and fro in the darkness, and sometimes giving a little shiver with his skin as if a fly had lighted on him. But in the end he too slept. Chapter 13. An Unexpected Meeting. "Wake up, Diggory! Wake up, Fledge!" came the voice of Polly. "It has turned into a toffee tree, and it's the loveliest morning." The low early sunshine was streaming through the wood, and the grass was gray with dew, and cobwebs were like silver. Just beside them was a little, very dark wooded tree, about the size of an apple tree. The leaves were whitish and rather papery, like the herb called honesty, and it was loaded with little brown fruits that looked rather like dates. "Hurrah!" said Diggory, "but I'm going to have a dip first," and he rushed through a flowering thicket or two down to the river's edge. Have you ever bathed in a mountain river that is rushing in shallow cataracts over red and blue and yellow stones with the sun on it? It is as good as the sea, and in some ways almost better. Of course, he had to dress again without drying, but it was well worth it. When he came back, Polly went down and had her bath. At least she said that's what she'd been doing, but we know she wasn't much of a swimmer, and perhaps it's best not to ask too many questions. Fledge visited the river too, but he only stood in midstream, stooping down for a long drink of water, and then shaking his mane and neighing several times. All right, guys, this is where we're going to stop for today. We got to chapter 13, so that's pretty cool. Watch tomorrow to read what happens and see if they get to the garden. Bye.